Behind the palace's golden gates, a storm brews that few saw coming. Whispers echo through royal corridors, whispers that Prince William is defying his father, the king, over a decision that could shape Princess Charlotte's destiny. A power struggle, cloaked in protocol and smiles, is now threatening to tear apart the very foundation of the Windsor family. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began subtly, an unspoken shift in the energy of the palace. Long-time aides exchanged glances in marble-floored hallways, sensing something was amiss. The usual routine of tightly choreographed engagements and carefully worded press releases had grown brittle, as if something under the surface was waiting to snap. And then came the moment no one could ignore. Princess Charlotte, young yet perceptive, overheard what insiders called a fractured storm. Hushed voices in the study, muffled by the walls of Kensington, spoke her name. Her worried gaze later that day was noticed by her nanny and then by Catherine. But it wasn't just a child's confusion that rippled through the royal household. It was the undeniable sense that the future of the monarchy was being rewritten behind closed doors. Prince William, usually the embodiment of restraint, had been seen leaving an emergency meeting at Buckingham without a word. His expression was thunderous, his fists clenched, his silence louder than any royal statement. The meeting, some say, was called after a confidential dossier was delivered to Charles, marked with Charlotte's initials and sealed with the royal crest. Its contents remain unknown, but its timing has ignited theories, suspicions, and dread. According to one former palace official, this document outlines a preparatory structure to position Charlotte for a role that bypasses traditional succession logic, one that elevates her beyond even her older brother in symbolic representation. A move that many fear may mirror the very tactics that once cast Princess Diana into the relentless grip of the crown's image machine. Late at night, Charles has been holding unscheduled sessions with senior royal advisors, but not once has William been formally included. That exclusion has created a rift impossible to disguise. Advisors find themselves walking a tightrope between loyalty to the sovereign and respect for the heir. Some whisper of resignations, others of silent allegiance to William's guarded determination. And then, as if ripped from the pages of a political thriller, a source from within the palace leaked the existence of a second document. This one reportedly titled "The Future of the Crown's Daughters." Though no one has confirmed its details, speculation is rampant. Is Charlotte being groomed for ceremonial dominance? Or is she the face of a modern monarchy the king is desperate to secure before his time runs out? But what could cause a future king to challenge his own father? And what future has Charles envisioned for his granddaughter that William so fiercely rejects? The question haunting royal insiders: is Princess Charlotte being shaped for greatness, or manipulated as a pawn in a larger royal game? As Charles pushes for a controversial title assignment, William fears a repeat of history, one that cost his own mother dearly. It began with murmurs, subtle, calculated whispers that Charles had authorized the drafting of a proclamation, not for policy nor for public engagement, but for legacy. The title in question, Duchess of Windsor. To the uninformed, it might sound like an honor. But within royal circles, the name carries weight, scandal, and unspoken shame. It was last held by Wallis Simpson, the woman whose relationship with Edward VIII forced an abdication and fractured the royal house. To revive it now, with Charlotte at the center, was no coincidence. It was a signal, a message that the monarchy was shedding its past limitations and reaching toward a new, carefully branded future. But not everyone inside the palace saw it as progress, least of all her father. William's fears ran deeper than titles. This wasn't just about names, it was about repetition, about watching a young girl, his own daughter, drawn into a system that had once adored and then consumed his mother. Those closest to him say he's haunted by images of Diana, smiling to the cameras while crumbling inside. The idea of Charlotte being shaped to perform rather than live, to charm before she could choose, to be adored and admired before understanding the cost, that idea tormented him. And yet, the mechanisms of the monarchy, old and relentless, were already in motion. Catherine, ever poised, ever silent in public, didn't need to say a word. Her expressions in meetings with palace staff told more than any interview could. A sidelong glance, a tightening jaw, a hand protectively resting on Charlotte's shoulder. She wasn't simply resisting, she was watching and documenting every move. Those who have worked alongside her speak of quiet strength, a steel that bends for no crown. And though she never raised her voice, her absence from select engagements with Charles became its own form of protest, an elegant defiance that didn't go unnoticed. Meanwhile, the press began to stir. Leaks emerged suggesting Charlotte had begun early-stage preparatory duties, coded language for being groomed, training in etiquette, controlled public appearances, curated exposure to media outlets. Royal commentators framed it as preparation for a modern monarchy, but critics labelled it premature exploitation. The tension between preserving the crown and protecting a child grew sharper by the day. And while tradition dictated that Charles hold the power to bestow titles, William's instincts as a father, not just a future king, refused to be silenced. What emerged wasn't just a disagreement, it was a chasm, a generational divide laid bare. One clinging to royal precedent, the other fighting for a new kind of freedom. And just when it seemed like the family might quietly resolve the issue, one late-night event would ignite the firestorm. At midnight, under the shimmering chandeliers of Clarence House, Prince William did the unthinkable. He stood before Charles with an ultimatum that could redefine the monarchy. Sources claim the palace staff were ordered out. The confrontation was cold, direct, and explosive. It was the kind of moment the monarchy had always feared, private rebellion, bleeding into the structure of public power. William arrived without his usual security, without aides, without the trappings of royalty. Just a man, a father, and a future king, demanding answers from the one man he could no longer agree with. What had once been tension buried beneath formalities had finally erupted into fury. The topic, his daughter, his terms, unyielding. Charlotte's name, he had learned, was quietly removed from upcoming royal documentation. Speeches were rewritten, appearances restructured, titles drafted behind closed doors. For William, it wasn't just disrespect, it was betrayal. The move confirmed what he'd suspected for weeks. Charles was forging a future for Charlotte without consulting her own parents. That night, William didn't ask for clarity, he demanded control. He presented one non-negotiable clause, a full veto over any future title or ceremonial responsibility assigned to Charlotte until she turned 18. No announcements, no engagements, no claims without his consent. For Charles, that demand was nothing short of insubordination. The king, still burdened by decades of protocol and the shadow of his mother's iron rule, reminded William of the danger in challenging generational precedent. But the words fell flat. William, whose voice rarely rose in public or private, refused to budge. The exchange escalated, voices rising in anger, words sharpened with pain. Neither man blinked. A senior staff member, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, allegedly heard enough to understand that this was no family disagreement, it was war. Days later, that aide submitted a quiet resignation, citing irreconcilable moral conflict. This was not a simple rift. This was a fracture, deep and dangerous. It marked the first time since Charles's coronation that father and son had stood on opposite ends of power, each claiming the moral high ground, each believing he was protecting the crown. But where Charles saw monarchy, William saw family. Where the king demanded legacy, the prince demanded freedom for his daughter and for the choices she had yet to make. The palace awoke the next morning, under a cloud of silence, but the silence wasn't peace. It was the quiet before the next blow. As tensions spilled into the next day, Camilla made a bold move that would only deepen the divide, and Catherine was not having it. While the men clashed, Queen Camilla made a move in silence, whispering her influence where it would hurt most. But Catherine, fiercely protective of her daughter, pushed back in a way that turned heads and left Camilla rattled. Behind palace doors, as William and Charles locked horns in private confrontations, Camilla began maneuvering the shadows. Though outwardly removed from the dispute, insiders claim she seized the vacuum left in the wake of their standoff. In discreet conversations with trusted royal advisors, Camilla floated the idea that Charlotte could serve as the face of a rebranded firm. a monarchy softened by youth and modern femininity, yet still moulded under traditional authority. Her suggestion, however, wasn't merely a proposal, it was a calculated infiltration into Catherine's realm. Without consulting Charlotte's parents, Camilla orchestrated an invitation to a high-profile royal charity gala, allegedly framing the event as a harmless photo opportunity for the young princess. The optics were poised to be powerful, the symbolism piercing, but Catherine wasn't about to let history rewrite itself. When news of the planned appearance reached her, she acted decisively and without hesitation. The event was pulled. Charlotte would not be attending, no explanation offered, no room for negotiation. Palace planners were stunned. Years of protocol, hierarchy and deference collapsed in a single decision from the Princess of Wales. Whispers of insubordination spread, but so too did admiration. Catherine wasn't just protecting Charlotte, she was drawing a line in the royal sand, and Camilla noticed. What followed next was anything but subtle. At a formal service at Windsor, witnesses noted the tension unspoken, yet unmistakable. A brief exchange between the Queen and the Princess, words too low to be heard but faces too sharp to be ignored. Camilla's expression, icy and unreadable. Catherine's, composed but unrelenting. The media pounced within hours. Tabloids splashed with headlines like "Queen versus Princess, who speaks for the future?" and "Royal women at war, the battle for Charlotte." But beneath the sensationalism lay a deeper truth. The monarchy was no longer a unified front. It had become a chessboard, and Charlotte the next GE. Narration was its most contested piece. Still, amidst the chaos, William and Catherine held steady. They appeared together at official events, poised and aligned, shielding their children from the maelstrom that raged beneath the surface. But those close to them knew better. Behind the curtain, the pressure mounted. Each appearance, each silence, each photograph was a coded message. A reminder that while Charles reigned and Camilla advised, William and Catherine were now shaping the soul of the institution. And then, out of nowhere, Princess Anne broke her silence with a private message that stunned even Charles. Not all allies wear crowns. Princess Anne, the most respected royal workhorse, did something no one expected. She wrote William a personal letter, hidden from the eyes of the crown. Its message? Both a warning and a call to arms. Delivered by a trusted aide in silence, the envelope bore the unmistakable royal cipher of Anne herself, but no one outside the immediate family circle knew it existed. There were no public statements, no television appearances, only ink, parchment, and the weight of a legacy few could ever understand. Within the walls of Kensington Palace, William unfolded the letter slowly, the words inside cutting deeper than any speech or briefing ever had. Anne, famously stoic and unshakable, had chosen her moment carefully, and in those carefully chosen words, she revealed a side rarely seen, a woman not of ceremony, but of conviction. She began by acknowledging what many refused to say aloud. Charlotte's independence was already beginning to flicker, and that flame could either be nurtured or extinguished. Anne admitted she had watched the child closely, recognized her quiet strength, and feared the system would try to reshape it before she had a chance to own it. Then came the stories, fragments of conversations long buried, moments shared with Queen Elizabeth II herself. The late monarch, Anne revealed, had quietly expressed regret near the end of her reign about the way young royals were boxed into roles before they could define themselves. It was a confession not meant for public ears, but Anne preserved it, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. That moment, it seemed, had finally come. Anne's words shifted from reflective to resolute. She urged William not to surrender to the machinery of tradition, not to let precedent silence paternal instinct. "Trust your gut over protocol," she wrote, "because protocol doesn't love your daughter, you do." And then, in a line that would later leave William breathless, she ended the letter with a haunting truth. "Protect her from what I couldn't stop for myself." For a woman who had sacrificed her own sense of self to uphold the monarchy's relentless demands, it was not just advice, it was a confession of regret, a plea for redemption, passed from one generation to the next. When William finished reading, he didn't speak. But those in the palace that night noticed something different, a shift in his posture, a storm behind his eyes, and Catherine, who had remained composed through every confrontation, was later seen quietly reaching for his hand in the drawing room. No words, just a moment of unity in the eye of a brewing storm. The letter never entered the archives. It was never scanned or filed. William kept it with him close. Because it wasn't just Anne's voice in those pages, it was the voice of every royal silenced before they had the strength to fight. But as support for William swelled in shadows, Charles launched a very public countermeasure, dragging the entire issue into the spotlight. In a calculated masterstroke, King Charles staged a public event that left no room for speculation. With Charlotte by his side, he unveiled a vision of the monarchy's future, broadcast to the world, but William wasn't there. And that absence spoke volumes. The event was framed as a youth leadership forum, a celebration of the next generation's role in shaping Britain's future. But for those paying attention, it was more than a forum, it was a spectacle, a message cloaked in pageantry. As Charles stepped forward before a national audience, the cameras deliberately panned to Charlotte, seated beside him, her composure flawless, her presence undeniable. No other senior royals flanked the king. No mention of William, no appearance by Catherine, just a monarch, a child, and a stage designed to convey permanence. Charles spoke of continuity, of preparing the crown for modern times. His words, the emerging generation of royal leaders, hung in the air like a verdict. He never named Charlotte as a future monarch, but he didn't have to. The implication was carved into every word, every pause, every sidelong glance toward the young princess. Body language analysts descended on the footage within hours. The way Charles rested his hand on the table, the subtle tilt of Charlotte's head, the orchestrated symmetry of the moment, all dissected like a coronation rehearsal in slow motion. Commentators called it the soft launch of a new royal era, one not yet written in law but etched in perception. Tabloids branded it the symbolic passing of the torch. But it wasn't the presence of Charlotte that set the world alight. It was the absence of her parents. William and Catherine were nowhere to be seen. No statement, no explanation, no supportive gaze from the sidelines. Their silence was not interpreted as oversight, it was rebellion. In royal history, absence speaks louder than applause. This was not a family in harmony, but a house divided. Royal insiders, speaking under anonymity, claimed the forum had been planned without William's approval and announced only it was too late to object. For many within the institution, it confirmed what they feared. Charles had stopped waiting for consent. He had declared the future unilaterally, and in doing so cast his own son in the shadows. The message was unmistakable: I decide the future, and the world was meant to listen. But far from retreating, William and Catherine crafted a silent but powerful response, one that would remind the world who truly stands with the people. In an unexpected moment during a routine engagement, young Princess Charlotte made a quiet gesture, innocent on the surface, but with layers of symbolic defiance. The media didn't miss it, and neither did her grandfather. It was supposed to be a harmless visit, a small public appearance designed to soften the mood after weeks of tension. But what unfolded struck deeper than any speech or orchestrated photo call. Observers noticed something pinned delicately to Charlotte's coat, something no one had seen her wear before. A simple forget-me-not brooch, the very one associated with Diana, Princess of Wales. Quietly gifted by William to his daughter, it was a private token now thrust into the public eye. The message was unspoken, but its impact undeniable. It wasn't just a tribute, it was a reminder, a warning, a whisper across time that someone still remembered the cost of royal pressure, someone who had once worn a crown of sorrow behind a curtain of applause. But the gesture didn't end there. Rumors began swirling that Charlotte had specifically requested not to speak publicly during the engagement. Not out of fear, but out of choice. And that choice in itself became a royal earthquake. Catherine, who had spent weeks walking the razor-thin line between loyalty and protection, reportedly told aides, "Let her choose, she has a voice." It wasn't just motherly intuition, it was an open rejection of the palace's long-standing tendency to script, direct and control. Suddenly, a child was reclaiming agency inside the most rigid institution in the world. And then came the drawings. Quiet, innocent sketches Charlotte had made at home, later mentioned by a close household insider. Portraits of the late Queen Elizabeth II, surrounded by stars and handwritten words, "My future." Some dismissed it as childish fantasy. Others saw it for what it truly was, a deeply instinctive connection to a legacy that, in many ways, only Charlotte could carry forward. The drawings went viral within hours. The public, exhausted by protocol and scandal, embraced the little girl whose actions spoke louder than any throne. Social media platforms became flooded with messages of support. Let her be a child. Diana would be proud. She's already stronger than they realize. Even inside the palace, the shift was palpable. Charles, who had meticulously crafted his public response to the growing crisis, reportedly paused the release of a long-planned announcement regarding Charlotte's future ceremonial role, not out of defeat but out of reflection. Perhaps for the first time, the king saw something in his granddaughter that mirrored a past he'd spent decades trying to control. Or maybe, just maybe, he feared the court of public opinion more than he feared his own son's rebellion. But as the family reeled from Charlotte's silent message, the press uncovered a royal document sealed away until now, deep within the royal archives. A clause long believed irrelevant suddenly holds critical power. It outlines restrictions on the roles of heirs under 18, and it may completely dismantle Charles's plans for Charlotte. Who hid it, and why now? The revelation came not through an official release, but through a carefully calculated leak. Late one evening, a document surfaced among senior legal advisors within the royal court. Dated 1984 and signed by Queen Elizabeth II herself, the clause had been buried in a lesser-known royal decree concerning ceremonial roles and public representation. At the time, it appeared to be a simple safeguard limiting the involvement of royal minors in state or institutional duties unless granted unanimous consent by a majority of the reigning monarch's council. But now, with Charlotte at the center of a political and generational storm, this forgotten rule had become a loaded weapon. Its wording was explicit. No royal under 18 could be assigned permanent public duties or symbolic titles without documented parental approval, regardless of the monarch's wishes. In light of everything Charles had orchestrated, it struck like thunder through the palace halls. Legal teams scrambled. Some advisors interpreted the clause as merely symbolic, a precaution, not a prohibition. But others, particularly those close to William, saw something very different. They argued that the document's intent was clear. Queen Elizabeth had quietly embedded a protective net for young heirs, a legal line that even sovereign ambition could not cross. And the timing of its re-emergence? Far too precise to be coincidence. Speculation exploded behind the scenes that Princess Anne's inner circle had tipped off William's legal team, directing them to the document's location and historical context. It wasn't just a matter of tradition anymore. It was about precedent, and precedent in the royal family is everything. More startling still was the suspicion that the clause had been intentionally obscured following Charles's accession. According to one insider, a number of royal documents had been quietly reclassified or removed from standard circulation in the early days of his reign. This particular clause, buried under LA, years of bureaucratic dust, had somehow evaded attention until now. And with its sudden return, the power struggle that had once played out in whispers and gestures was now morphing into a full-scale legal confrontation. No longer just father versus son. This was monarchy versus mandate. Emotion gave way to legal maneuvering. Statements were reviewed, announcements postponed, strategy meetings doubled. Charlotte's fate had now become a matter not only of sentiment, but statute. Every move was calculated, every pause meaningful. The Queen's forgotten words had come back to haunt her son, casting a long and unforgiving shadow over his attempt to control the narrative. And behind closed doors, Charles reportedly demanded urgent counsel, asking a question no king ever wants to voice. What if the law favors the heir instead of the crown? And with this legal curveball thrown, one final confrontation loomed, one that would forever define the royal line's future. In a private chamber of Balmoral, beneath the weight of portraits and lineage, the king and his heir stood face to face. What began as a disagreement about a granddaughter's future had become a defining fracture between past and present. Something had to give. It was no longer about symbolism, protocol, or legacy. It was about trust and the shattering of it. Charles, worn by the pressures of reign and the burden of upholding generations of precedent, made the first move. He offered what he called a compromise. Charlotte would be given the opportunity to choose her royal path at 16. Until then, her exposure would be limited, her responsibilities curated, her future lightly traced but never carved in stone. But to William, it wasn't enough. His voice was quiet, but firm, unwavering. He demanded the final word over all decisions concerning his daughter until she came of age 18. No appearances, no titles, no pala. CE messaging spun around her image without his and Catherine's consent. Not again. Not like his mother. The room thickened with silence. Years of tension, of father-son differences cloaked in royal formality, now laid bare. Charles, emotionally frayed, asked William if he truly believed the crown could bend to personal fear. And in that moment, William didn't answer with words, he answered with memory. Diana's memory. Her smile, her suffering, her isolation. The image of her standing alone despite the cameras that adored her. He reminded his father that history had taught them enough, and that if they chose to ignore it now, they would be choosing tragedy once more. Catherine said nothing. She didn't have to. She stood at William's side, not as a consort, but as a mother. Her silence was not absence, it was solidarity. And in her stillness, Charles saw the inevitable. The monarchy he led was not the monarchy of yesterday. The people now looked to empathy, not endurance, to authenticity, not appearance. Slowly, the king relented. But he didn't do so without leaving behind one final searing line. "You've always been my successor, but now you are my opposition." The words lingered like a wound neither man would admit to feeling, and so it was written not in decree but in understanding. Charlotte would bear no title until her 18th birthday. No royal obligation would be placed upon her without her consent, and no public shaping of her image would proceed without her parents' approval. For the first time in modern royal history, a child of the crown would grow in private, protected not by tradition but by choice. As the cameras flash and smiles return to public life, behind the scenes, the House of Windsor has been forever changed. A daughter's future ignited a firestorm, and from the ashes a new royal order may rise. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, ND, subscribe, and we will see you in next one.